gonna want power if you're gonna do anything.
Just do it! Do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Yep. Jess, if
Yesterday,
this sounds
you said
perfect.
tomorrow. So just do it! Do it! Make your dreams come true! Just
He's like a very angry
do it!
do it.
Some people dream success while you're gonna wake up and work hard at it. Nothing is impossible.
He has some anger management issues.
Or anyone else would quit. And you're not gonna stop there. No! What are you waiting for? Do it! Do it! Just do it! Do it! Yes, you can! Just do it! Do it!
Commercial. This
Is
sounds
this
loyal.
inspirational or is this making
No,
it
it's the
sound
Nike
like-
commercial.
Yeah.
Stop giving up.
He has interesting hair.
This would be a good commercial.
This would.
This seems like a commercial.
All right.
That's like a commercial.
So, now that none of you have any doubt anymore, we're good to go, right?
What?
Well, because okay, so first off, that was a big meme before you guys were on the internet. Because this actor, Shia LaBeouf, who if you saw the last Indiana Jones movie, he's the next Indiana Jones, apparently. He made this thing on a green screen so that you could put it everywhere, and people have. So certainly if you watch, there's plenty of ridiculous things of him screaming at Batman about like, just do it, Batman! And, but the funny thing is, I mean, I did my fair share in my previous career of self-help stuff. And this is not that far off, that if you just yell at somebody loud enough, you just say, yes you can! Yes you can! Okay, I can! And, like, let's be honest,
It does kind of work.
sometimes it works, right? I mean, anybody who's played sports, I've met plenty of coaches that this is their whole philosophy.
They just yell at people.
Scream at you until you do it. In either direction. Scream at you and tell you you're horrible so that you're like, no, I'm not, and then you prove it. Or, you're right, coach, I can do it. I can climb a mountain. Like, there's one, I could have shown you guys, there's this one which made all the Christian circles, because it's a Christian movie about football, where at one point, you've seen this one, Michelle?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
okay.
may
The
have.
Facing the Giants, I think it's called. I think we've watched this back in the
I
day,
think
if you
I saw part
remember.
of it.
Where there's one part where the like lead football player, like he's like a big strong like lineman guy. He's like, we just can't win, coach. We just can't do it. So they have this challenge where you're supposed to crawl on all fours. Like a certain amount of time. If you guys have ever crawled on all fours, like after a while, it's tough. Like you don't get to use your knees; you have to stay on all four. And he puts somebody on his back. So there's somebody he's crawling on his back, and he's wearing a blindfold. And the coach is just like, "Just do it! You can do it! You can do it!" And he ends up like crawling across the entire field. And it's just this big inspirational moment and stuff like that. With this idea that doubt is replaced by just screaming, right? The louder you scream, eventually it's going to work. Seems to be the philosophy, I think. Which again, and that's kind of why, and I really appreciated those of you guys that were with us on Wednesday, I appreciated the fact that we kind of started wrestling with doubt. Because let's be honest, doubt's usually not okay, especially in church, where it's kind of doubt means you just don't have enough faith, right? You're just not Christian-y enough. You just got to be a little, if you liked Jesus a little bit more, you wouldn't actually doubt. Seems to be the way that we think about it. And that's tough, because again, that's not the way we see it in the Bible. So speaking of that, what I wanted us to look at today in the time that we have is to talk about Moses. Now my guess is you guys know Moses. A little bit?
I've never actually met him, but I've heard
This Moses
I've heard
guy.
of his
Well,
reputation.
the funny thing is that, not fun, I mean, I don't know if it's funny, but Moses is a really, really big deal. I mean, literally, if you were going to rank the like top most important people in the Bible, in our Bible, we would say Jesus is number 1. Moses is probably 2. Maybe 3 if you're a big David fan. But he's a really, really big deal. And we meet him, like, the first thing he does, we see him doubting. That's kind of his definitive characteristic to begin with. Now, if you guys have seen Prince of Egypt, 10 Commandments, anything like that.
Those.
Okay. you know his backstory, right? He's abandoned, forced to be abandoned as a baby. He is brought up in the Pharaoh's household by the Pharaoh's daughter. He then murders an Egyptian and has to run from the law, so he goes off into the wilderness. He ends up getting married and serves for his father-in-law's sheep for like 40 years. Eventually, he sees a bush that is on fire, but it doesn't burn up. He goes over to check it out. God starts talking to him through the bush, and this is where we'll pick it up.
It sounds crazier when you
My
subscribe it.
favorite prophet is actually Elijah. I don't know why.
Okay, that's cool. Elijah is an interesting fellow. Elisha, did we talk about him?
Elisha,
He was the one
Anyway.
with the bears, right?
He was the one with the
Dude,
bears.
we
We
don't
did talk
remember.
about
Can I
him.
say-
All right, so hang on. Let's get it. Let's dive into this first. Okay, because I wanted us to look at Exodus. Oh, what is this all about? Hold on. I don't like that. All right, let me change that background.
No, you
Hey, do you want to know something?
Yeah?
Is that Elijah just appears at one point, and then Elisha disappears at one point.
There we go.
So it's just like
All right, that's
Elijah,
much better.
and then Elisha.
I thought that would be full screen, but it is not. Okay, so Exodus chapter 3. We're hopping to verse 10. Now go, says God, the bush, whatever. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. And Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, well, what's his name? What should I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord of the God your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Then we'll skip ahead because then there's like a whole part where Moses is like, well, but I don't have any, like, why should anybody believe me? And then he says, like, he takes his staff, he turns his staff into a snake, then he turns it back into a staff. So he shows him like his power and stuff like
His
that.
hand turns into a
His hand turns leprous, that's true. So then let's skip ahead to chapter 4 and verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouth? Who made them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else.
Oh, gosh.
Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. So, what Moses' response to God is God says, go, I am sending you. And Moses basically has, I put down, he has 3 questions and 2 what I would call excuses, right? The 2 questions that we saw, and then the one that we skipped, is that who am I? Basically, who am I that I should go and speak in front of Pharaoh? Second one is, who are you that is sending me? Who should I tell people I'm coming on behalf of? The third one that we skipped is, why would they believe me? And then the 2 doubts or concerns or whatever, excuses. I'm not capable. I don't have the ability. I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue. And I don't want to go, is his last one. Which, is that an excuse? Is that a... I don't know. So the interesting one to me, well, or that I was thinking about even this morning, is that, let's see, is it going to let me go back? Oh, but now it's going to say down underneath it. Oh, well. Please send somebody else. This is literally God. In some translations, I don't want to go. And I mean, this whole pardon your servant Lord sounds very... I don't think it was that formal, that he was just like, 1,000 apologies, but please, it was just literally, I don't want to do this. And I really wonder, and honestly, I don't know, but just reading this verse, my thought is, if I'm Moses, I kind of think I just went through, this is the real reason I just don't want to. But... well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? I came up with 4 other reasons, and God didn't buy any of them. So at the very end, I'm kind of left with just, listen, I just don't want to go. Like that's all it comes down to. So then the question is why? Why doesn't Moses want to go? Why does Moses, or what does Moses doubt? And yeah, why doesn't he want to go? Well, the two things that the two excuses that he gives that I think are really important. Well, even more so, he didn't even talk about one big one, which is the fact that, remember Moses' history. I mean, Moses literally murdered somebody and buried the body in the sand. So he is a wanted murderer in Egypt. Now, granted, that was 40 years ago, so maybe they've forgotten, but I think what they wouldn't have forgotten is the fact that he didn't just murder somebody. He murdered an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew slave.
Yeah.
So not only did he kill somebody, he took sides. He says, I'm with the Hebrews, so much that he murdered the person, the oppressors. So whether or not they remember his crime, I'm betting they remember that. You sided with the Hebrews over us. So you want that guy to go in front of Pharaoh. Hey, like, you remember me, like the traitor to the nation? That's me. I'm going to walk in. Why wouldn't Pharaoh kill me on sight? But then there's the second one, which I think is really interesting. We skip over, or at least we downplay, mostly because we don't know what the phrase slow of speech and slow of tongue
I know what that
means.
means. Kind of.
You do? What do you think it means?
Not that
it
bright.
means that he's not that good at like talking, and he's not that good at speaking in different languages and stuff.
Yeah, I think, from what I've heard, I think it goes a step further than that. I think a lot of people think that he spoke with a stutter. So can you imagine this guy, because I think the picture, and again, I'm guessing none of you have seen the 1930s version of the Ten Commandments. Maybe you have. It's like 3.5 hours long, but Charlton Heston, one of the great speaking voices of all time, let my people go. That's not what this was. Moses was probably much more of like, Pharaoh, let my people go. Can you imagine a murderer talking like that to Pharaoh, who they believed not only was the king of all of Egypt, they believed he was a god.
Because it's stupid.
Well, but can you, like, would you do that? Would you walk in front of this king, this ruler of all, when you have a speech impediment? Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Alex.
They didn't think he was a god. I think they thought he was possessed by Horus.
Or yeah, they did.
No, I think they actually, that was the whole plague of the firstborn thing.
No.
We can get into that whole thing. Like, they thought that he was like, all the other gods listened to Pharaoh. Like, he was like the god of
Horus
gods.
is the king
That's
of
not
gods.
how mythology. That's
But
not how
Horus-
mythology works.
Okay, guys, not really the point of the story.
That's true, that's
Still.
true. We'll talk about that when we're talking about the Exodus. But, so,
Back to doubt.
my thought is, what is it, getting back to doubt, what is it that Moses actually doubts? I think the biggest thing he doubts is himself. I can't do this. I don't have the capability of doing this. I don't, like, again, all the odds are against me. I don't have the skill. I don't have the credibility. I don't have anything like that. And ultimately, I don't want to. And to a certain extent, all those other reasons could be why he doesn't want to. But he's also been living very comfortably with his family in the wilderness for 40 years. Hey, you go start a rebellion. Thanks. Like, I'm doing good. Can't you send somebody else?
Thanks, no.
But the interesting thing for me, I think about this one, is that, well, first off, did you guys notice what God's responses were to every single one of Moses's? Not a single response was the Shia LaBeouf, yes you can. I still don't know what this is, why he does that. But not a single one of those is yes you can. Every single response is yes, I can. I can't speak, I will speak for you. Who will they say is coming? Me. I am. I exist. That's all you need to say. Like, well, but like, why me? Like, because I'm going with you. Every single response is, it doesn't matter about you, it matters about me. So the crazy thing, I think, is that Moses doubting himself is ultimately him doubting God. God can't do it through me. And for me, that was what really struck a chord with me personally. is thinking about Moses' example of doubt for myself. Because the reality is, like, how much do I think God can do through me? Like, how many times do I doubt myself? And I don't see it as the same thing as doubting God, but ultimately it is. I mean, like, it's that one thing, like, to be honest with you guys, so I was a volunteer in youth ministry for like 5 or 6 years. I was an intern, and the great thing, which Tammy and Michelle, hopefully you guys know, the great thing about one of the great things about being a volunteer leader is that the buck doesn't stop with you. You always have a finger to point, well, I didn't want to do this, but Jeff made me. Like, there's always that, and not only that, but it's the certain thing, like, if something fails, like, hey, we tried, but like, I didn't come up with this idea, but like, I did. That's the really tough part. And don't get me wrong, I wanted to be a youth pastor. I was really excited about being a youth pastor, but the reality is, the buck stops here now. So it's kind of that thing of like, all right, here we go, and there's a lot of times about just the like, is this gonna work? Is this like, because it's my show now. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like I'm so great and Jesus is just a side. No, that's not what I mean. But it's that thing of like, okay, so it's up to me to, how do I hear from God and make sure that I'm doing what God wants? Like, that's tough. And I get that sense of doubt, that sense of questioning, can I really do this? I think all the time. And I wonder for the rest of us, like, I don't know that I ever put that together, that thinking that I can't do it is thinking that God can't do it. I don't necessarily make those connections in my mind. Because if the question is, could God pull this program off? Could God, go to summer camp? Could God of course, God could. But me? That's where that line gets a little bit fuzzy, and it's that challenge though that it's like it is the same thing, because God's not saying, "Hey Jeff, go create a youth ministry. You're on your own." No, He said like, "Here's my ministry, Jeff. Be my hands and feet in it." To each one of you guys, it's not like He's saying, like, "Hey Alex, that guy that's never heard about Jesus, go tell him. Good luck." No. He's saying, Alex, I want to use you to do this. I want to use you to be my witness to do this thing. And that question of, do I doubt that God could do that? For me, that's a different question, I think, than we normally ask. One thing that I loved, and maybe I don't remember if I told you guys this one before, but I know like Michelle and I went to a training a couple of weeks ago, and they told this story about this small group. And there was this one guy who was in the small group who I guess was like, I don't know if he was homeless, or they said that the line between being like spiritual and insane was very like, back and forth. And they were doing in this Bible study, they were talking about the verse, about like, we are the light of the world. And they talked about that, and his eyes just got huge. And he said, like, we are the light of the world? And he just sprints out the door and down the street. And they're like, well, there goes Kevin. I guess I got to go get him. So they went, and he had run all the way down the street to this park that apparently in this area, and I think this is in Canada or something, I don't know, but it was this park where like homeless people lived, and there was like a lot of drugs and gang, like it was the bad part of town. And they saw Kevin, and Kevin's standing there like this in the middle of the park. And they're like, Kevin, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm being a light. Can you feel the darkness trembling? And I was just like, that's so awesome.
Also very strange.
I don't see myself doing that.
I don't either.
Could I, like, if I went to, like, there was a missions trip that we used to do at my old church to a church called Powerhouse down in Watts. Now, I don't know if you guys know where Watts is. So Watts is like South Central Los Angeles, where if you go to this church, it's literally a compound where they have to bar the doors. There's bars on all of the windows. There's like a code just to get in the door because of how much gang violence and stuff like that. And I went there scared out of my mind. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like I can't wear, I mean, I guess this would be okay, but they even told you before, don't wear anything blue because you will be shot. Don't wear anything red because you will be shot. And I'm like, because those are gang colors. Don't wear anything that says the Raiders on it because you will be shot. Don't wear any, like all of these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I never once felt like I'm being the light. The darkness is trembling before me. So is that doubt? I mean, it is. It doesn't feel like it because it's like, well, that's perfectly rational. And it's just like, it's my own life and I'm worried about my own capabilities. But those two are not as separate as I think we make them out to seem. This idea of like, what can I do and what can God do should be the same thing, ultimately. So, with that, what do we do? Like, what do we do in our daily lives? Does that mean we're all supposed to go down to South Central Los Angeles and just stand there with our arms out? Does it mean, hug a drug dealer today? I don't know any about that.
God.
But I know that, one, the big thing that I really hope, and that's the reason we're spending 4 weeks on this, I really hope you guys feel it's okay to doubt. Like that, I mean, Moses doubted, and we don't blame him. Even God didn't blame him. Yes, the last verse talks about his anger burning, but notice what he still used Moses. And Moses is in, again, history, one of the greatest people in the Bible. And he started off by doubting. And I'm sure, and in fact, you can even trace through the things where he continued to doubt along the ways. That doesn't disqualify us from being used. That's just part of being human. Is the doubt part is natural. But the other thing is too, is that nobody has ever not doubted. I mean, really, you look through the Bible, the only person that never doubted is Jesus. And I hate to break it to you, none of you guys are Jesus. Now, don't get me wrong, that's who we aspire to be. And we shouldn't feel like, oh, I doubted, dang it, man, I'm not like Jesus, a little bit more. That's not the attitude, I don't think. We can still aspire to believe, but the doubt is okay. But I think the other part is kind of this I don't know, just giving it a shot, I guess, was what I was thinking. We're going back to Shia LaBeouf, talking about Indiana Jones. One of my favorite images from Indiana Jones comes from the third one, Last Crusade. And there's this point where there's this crevice, this cliff or whatever, and there's no way across. And he's reading through this little book, and it says that this is a leap of faith, where you just need to step off into this chasm. And then it turns out there's this bridge that he couldn't see or whatever.
Oh,
but it's still, you remember this one? It's still that moment of he literally puts his foot out and then just steps into nothingness, trusting. And that thing is that I'm guessing none of us will be in that same situation in our lives, but I think we all know what that looks like, what that feels like to take that leap of faith, to trust. Because I think if you guys are anything like me, there's a part of it too that I'm a little bit afraid if I do that, God's not going to show up. And maybe even worse is that if God doesn't show up, maybe even less about me, I'm going to get hurt and I'm going to whatever, and maybe more about what does this say about God? If I actually put God to the test and God doesn't come through, does God ever come through? What does that mean to my faith? And that's tough. Don't get me wrong. That's a tough thing to trust in him. But then we talked about last week, what if he does show up? Are you going to actually believe it? The last little, and I feel like there's been a whole lot of little stories this week, but one last one real quick that makes me think about last week and this week. So I had a moment when I was a new believer of saying, God, are you... literally, I was at this point, and we can talk about this another day, about like this kind of like place of no return, where I did not see a way out forward. I'm like, I am literally lost, and I need to know God is there. And so I was walking up in like the hills, and I was just like, God, I need to know that you're real. And literally, not out loud, but literally the second I thought that, I saw a shooting star go by. And I was just like, okay, message received, I got it. But it's that thing though, how many times, so that was 12 years ago. How many times in those last 12 years have I gone like, well, but, I mean, it was just an a meteorite coming through. It's just a scientific phenomenon. The fact that I happen to be looking in that one area, blah, 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 and all of this, and that's true, don't get me wrong, it's still a scientific thing that happened, but
God made the scientific thing happen.
that's true, and I literally got the proof I was asking for. What am I doing with it? Am I actually believing? Do I stop doubting and believe? Or do I find other reasons? And again, how much of it is just me? Do I actually believe that I can do it? Or God through me? All right, let's pray. And then again, I really hope you guys can join us on Wednesday, because I want to hear more about your guys' thoughts
We're going to be going bowling on Friday.
on that one. And that's true. And then Friday for bowling. Let me pray, and then away we shall go. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time. And thank you for this place. I pray for all of us that that we would feel comfortable enough in our relationship with you to doubt you. Not that we're saying that doubt is a good thing, but doubt is a natural thing. Doubt is just how we're wired. And it's, I don't know, I get the sense that it's not so much the fact that we doubt, it's what comes from that. Does doubt lead us further from you, or can doubt actually draw us closer? It's so amazing that every time Moses had an objection, every time Moses had a doubt or anything like that, you responded with, I am sufficient. I am strong enough. I will be there. I will speak through you. And I think you do that for us today. It maybe doesn't sound the same. It maybe doesn't come from a burning bush, but those answers are still the same, I think, for us. Is that you are sufficient to do what needs to be done through us. And the more that you use us, the greater glory you get, not the greater glory we get. Help us see that, help us trust that a little bit more each day. Thank you, we love you, and in Jesus' name, amen.